Welcome to Heartbreak Chronicles. Nathan Bradford used to believe in three things. His marriage was unbreakable, his friendships were unbreakable, and he knew how to control his anger. Tonight, all three of those things fell apart. The company's annual party was supposed to be a pleasant gathering, with a few glasses of champagne, the laughter of his colleagues, and his wife Vanessa taking his arm and saying, "I love you." Instead, that night had turned into a nightmare. Every second of it like a searing blade carved into his marrow. Nathan stood in the corner of the conference hall, the glass in his hand nearly crushed. As a senior systems architect at Rivertech, he's used to being in control. His keen blue eyes can find the tiniest error in thousands of lines of code, and his mind can deconstruct the most complex technical challenges. But at the moment, his analytical skills were completely ineffective. Vanessa stood in the center of the room, her mesmerized eyes glinting with a certain cruelty, her voice sharp enough to cut through the air. "Your tiny guy is useless. You can't even get me pregnant, unlike your best friend. He's the real man, the real father of our children." Her words exploded like a bomb in the room, causing an unnatural silence. Nathan watched as his co-workers' expressions shifted from embarrassment to shock to pity. Some stared at the floor, others exchanged glances, and still others surreptitiously pulled out their cell phones, no doubt documenting the disaster. As for Nathan, he felt like his soul was leaving his body, suspended from the ceiling, looking down on this terrible farce. What did Vanessa just say? Connor? Connor Williams was Nathan's best friend for 15 years, was his best man and a regular on Sunday football nights. And now he's the father of the child in Nathan's wife's womb? Connor, the man who heads up Rivertech's marketing department, the man who couldn't wait to get all the details after Nathan and Vanessa's first date. Connor, who always offered to take care of Vanessa when Nathan was traveling. Everything began to become clear, like pieces of a puzzle finally finding their place. Nathan's first thought was that she must be drunk and babbling. But when he saw the malice in her eyes, the sense of relief that could only come from telling the truth, he knew it wasn't alcohol talking, but a secret that had been suppressed for too long finally bursting forth. Nathan's body was as heavy as lead, yet he moved like a controlled puppet on strings. He crossed the room, each step feeling like he was walking toward an execution. He had been a campus wrestling champion and worked out on weekdays, but at the moment, every muscle in his body was as stiff as if it had been frozen. He reached out and grabbed Vanessa's arm with enough force to leave fingerprints. "We should go." His voice was strangely, frighteningly calm. That calm is the quiet before the eruption of a volcano, the dead silence before the storm. A flash of fear flashed in Vanessa's eyes, as if she finally realized what she had just said. The expensive makeup on her well-kept face began to blur with tears. As the director of sales for one of San Francisco's top beauty companies, she was always flawless, never letting anyone see any cracks. "Nathan, Her words were cut short as Nathan tugged her through the shocked crowd like he was dragging a corpse. He could hear the whispers behind him, see the mixture of sympathy and curiosity that people handed him. His dignity was shredded like a piece of paper, and pieces of it fluttered to the ground. The cold night air hit his face, but he couldn't feel it. October nights in San Francisco were usually cold and damp, but Nathan's skin felt only a burning tingle. He pushed Vanessa into the passenger seat and slammed the door, sliding himself into the driver's seat. His hands gripped the steering wheel so hard that his knuckles turned white. "Explain," he ordered, his voice as rough as sandpaper. Vanessa stared ahead, tears pooling in her eyes. Her usually confident green eyes now glittered with fear and remorse. "I didn't want this," she whispered. "I didn't want you to find out, especially not this way." Nathan tried to laugh, but it came out as a horrible sound, somewhere between a cry and a scream. "So what do you want? Let me keep raising his kids like a fool?" He didn't know which direction their home was, or had been. The Ocean View condo they spent 5 years of their savings to buy, the place where he worked late into the night every day, just so he could pay off the mortgage early. 6 months, she admitted, her voice so small it was barely audible. "It's been 6 months. 6 months. It meant that when Nathan was in Boston on a 2-week business trip, when he called her almost every night to tell her how much he missed her, she was with Connor. This means that when they go to Connor's cabin together for the weekend, while Nathan is fishing at the lake, Connor and Vanessa could be. Images flashed through his mind. Connor's overly intimate gestures as he wiped the sauce off Vanessa's lips. Vanessa's hastily ended phone call when Nathan came home. The unintentional glances they exchanged at the party. The nights Vanessa refused to be intimate and excused herself as too tired. All the clues point to the same terrible truth. Nathan braked hard, almost sending both men into the windshield. "Get out of the car," he growled. Vanessa froze. "What? Get out of the car," he repeated, his voice icy. "You think I'm going to let you go home? That's my home, not yours. I made the down payment, and my name is on the real estate license." Vanessa's tears finally streamed down her face, cutting through her carefully painted makeup. Black mascara left ugly marks on her cheeks, like the permanent scars the betrayal she'd done to Nathan had left on his heart. "Nathan, please, we can talk. I didn't mean for it to happen. It just happened, and then I found out I was pregnant, and the doctor said." Nathan reached over and opened the door on her side of the car. "It's none of my business," he said. "You're his problem now. Go find Connor, since he's the real man." Vanessa didn't move, tears blurring her vision. "You can't just leave me here," she whispered. Nathan laughed, one of those hollow laughs. "I can't. Like you can't betray me? Like you can't spread your legs in front of my best friend? Like you can't humiliate me in front of all your coworkers?" His voice gradually raised into a growl. "Get out of the car." He was practically screaming that last sentence. Vanessa hesitated, then slowly stepped out of the car, arms wrapped around herself. Her designer gown fluttered in the night breeze, and the diamond necklace Nathan had bought for her 30th birthday sparkled in the streetlights. He once worked 3 months of overtime for that necklace just to see the smile on her face. Nathan hit the gas without waiting for her to close the door, the tires screeching harshly on the asphalt, just like the scream he wanted to make inside. He drove aimlessly down the street, his thoughts churning like a storm. The black Audi A6 was his and Vanessa's first luxury car, and they had been so excited when they bought it, planning to drive it to the Grand Canyon, Yellowstone, and even Canada. Now it's just another vessel for lies, another witness to betrayal. His old life, the one he thought was safe and secure, crumbled before his eyes. That the woman he'd been married to for 5 years, the woman he thought he knew, could do this to him. They've been through so much together, the hard work of starting a business after college, the joy of their first high-paying job, the satisfaction of buying their dream home. They have spent so many nights together, sharing dreams, fears, and hopes. Or rather, he thought they were sharing. Now he doubts every smile, every kiss, every "I love you." Nathan's thoughts go back 2 years to how excited they were when they decided to have a baby. They transformed a corner of their bedroom into a baby corner, bought a tiny bassinet, and covered the walls with cute animal stickers. Vanessa even made a long list of baby names, and they discussed the meaning of each one at the weekend breakfast table. They tried it for a year and then went to the doctor. In that office room that smelled strongly of disinfectant, the doctor flipped through the test reports and said that everything looked normal, it just took longer sometimes. It never occurred to them that the infertility problem might be with him, and Vanessa never seemed to suspect as much. Or rather, he thought she didn't. Now he realizes that he may have been wrong. Did she discuss this with Connor? Did they laugh at him after sex? Laughing at his tiny little guy? Did they compare his performance with Connor's? These thoughts spread through his mind like poison, each one more painful and sickening than the previous. His hands tightened on the steering wheel, his nails sinking into his palms, leaving for crescent-shaped marks. Blood oozed from the wound, but he could barely feel the pain. The physical pain paled in comparison to his inner torment. He has to go face Connor. Need answers. Call for some kind of relief. Maybe it's a violent outburst, maybe it's a painful cry, or maybe it's just hearing Connor admit it all in person. Whatever it was, he knew he had to face this former friend, now betrayer. He swerved hard, tires screeching in protest on the wet pavement. He drove to Connor's apartment, dangerously fast. Red lights meant nothing to him, and speed limit signs were just blurry shadows on the side of the road. A police car's siren sounded briefly, but he ignored it and continued to drive frantically until the sound faded into the night. Connor lives in an upscale apartment building on the north side of the city, an artsy neighborhood filled with galleries, cafes, and microbreweries. That's exactly what Connor is: stylish, edgy, and always ahead of the curve. Nathan had once envied his lifestyle. Now he felt nothing but disgust. He slammed on the brakes underneath the apartment building, the tires making a harsh sound and leaving almost black marks on the ground. The security guard poked his head out of the door booth, but Nathan had already stormed into the lobby and headed straight for the elevator. He knew every security officer in the building and used to bring them coffee and donuts. Tonight, they wisely chose not to stop the man with the hideous expression. The elevator is too slow. Nathan turned to the stairs and climbed the 5 flights in 3 steps. His heart was beating like thunder, and it was no longer blood that flowed through his veins, but pure rage. He slammed his fist into Connor's door enough to shake the entire frame. "Open the door," he yelled, his voice echoing through the empty hallway like the growl of a wounded beast. No response. The apartment was dark, no sound, no movement. He smashed it again, harder, enough to make the knuckles ooze blood. "Connor, I know you're in there. Open the door for me." The door remains closed. The neighbor's door quietly opened a crack and quickly closed again, no doubt startled by the sudden noise. Nathan doesn't care. He just wants to face the man who took his life away. Nathan's sanity crumbled like a dike as he took a step back and kicked at the door lock. Years of fitness provided a surprising amount of force to the blow, the wood snapping under the impact and the door swinging open, hitting the wall with a loud thud. An expensive abstract painting falls off the wall, the glass of the frame shattering, as shattered and broken as Nathan's trust. He rushes into Connor's apartment expecting to see the man who betrayed him, but the house is dark and terribly quiet. There was no sound of television, no sound of water, no sign of any life present. He turned on the lights, and the intense light illuminated the beautifully decorated bachelor pad. Connor was always big on quality of life. Italian leather sofas, Scandinavian-style wooden furniture, and limited edition artwork on the walls. These are the things he often brags about in front of Nathan, and in hindsight, they carry a sickening double meaning. Not only is he taking Nathan's wife, but he's also bragging that he's better at life than Nathan is. There was no one on the couch, no one in the kitchen, and the bedroom was empty. But the messy sheets on the bed showed Connor must have come back during the night. There was still half a glass of whiskey in the glass, and the ice had melted. There was still undried moisture on the bathroom mirror, and shaved stubble was strewn across the sink. He just left a short time ago. Maybe he went to the company party too? The thought sent a wave of nausea through Nathan. If Connor was at the party, then he would have seen Vanessa's outburst and would have known that their secret was out. He's probably avoiding confronting Nathan and hiding like a coward. Nathan pulled out his cell phone and found Connor's name in the contact list. The name used to stand for friendship, trust, and countless fond memories. Crazy parties in college, road trips after graduation, speeches at each other's weddings. Now, the name stands only for betrayal. His thumb hovered over the dial button, but he realized he didn't want to settle this over the phone. No, he was going to confront Connor face to face, look the bastard in the eye, and make him admit his betrayal. Possibly, he'd like to punch him in the face, or more. His gaze swept across the room and landed on the laptop on Connor's desk. An idea flashed through his mind. As a systems architect, Nathan knows computer systems inside and out. If anyone knows how to get digital evidence, it's him. He turned on his computer, and the screen lit up, displaying a picture of Vanessa as wallpaper. It was taken last summer when the 3 of them went on vacation together in the Lake District, with Vanessa wearing a bikini and smiling for the camera. Nathan felt a wave of revulsion. Connor had even set her up as wallpaper, flaunting his trophy right under Nathan's nose. The computer prompts for a password. Nathan sneered. He knows the code, just like Connor knows his. It was a habit they had established in their college days, a symbol of brotherly trust. They know each other's passwords in case of emergencies. How could they have imagined then that one day that trust would be exploited in such a twisted way? He enters Maverick TX92, Connor's first car and year of birth. The computer unlocked and went to the desktop. Nathan clicks directly on the email client and starts searching for Vanessa's name. The first search was fruitless, which confused him. Given Connor's character, there's no way he wouldn't keep the evidence. Nathan thinks deeper and realizes that Connor may be using some sort of concealment. He started checking hidden folders and archives, and it didn't take him long to find the evidence. An email exchange hidden in a folder called Work Files. The folder was encrypted, but for Nathan, that level of protection was null and void. A few minutes later, he managed to crack the code. Inside were hundreds of emails, neatly organized by date, the earliest going back 2 years. 2 years. While Nathan is still working hard for their future, while he's working 12 hours a day just so he can give Vanessa a better life, she's been betraying him for 2 whole years. He clicked on the first one and immediately wished he hadn't. Last night was so wonderful, Vanessa wrote. I can't stop thinking about your touch. I think about you all the time when I'm with Nathan. He keeps talking about having kids, but you're the only one who can really satisfy me. Can't wait to see you again. Love you, V. Nathan's stomach twisted and he almost threw up. His hands trembled on the keyboard, but he forced himself to keep reading. He needed to know all the truth, no matter how painful. He continued down the list, each email more sickening than the last. They were planning to meet, while he was out, and sometimes even after the three of them shared a room. The emails are filled with detailed descriptions of their sex life, mockery of Nathan, and expectations for the future. Sometimes I wish Nathan would find out, Vanessa wrote in one email, so I could leave him and we could be together in the open. But I'm worried about the finances. You know his salary makes up the bulk of our family's income. That's it, money. Nathan always thought Vanessa loved him, even though their marriage was in trouble. But now the truth comes out. She stayed with him only for financial security and gave Connor her true feelings. And photos, too personal to make Nathan want to throw his computer out the window. The photos show Vanessa in a variety of provocative poses, some of which were even taken in their marital bed. There are also selfies of the two together, in hotel rooms, in Connor's car, and even in the alley behind the office building where Nathan works. But he didn't destroy the computer. Instead, he used a flash drive to copy all the emails and photos, which would be the first step in his revenge. Evidence, irrefutable evidence, would be his weapon to destroy them. He closed the computer and looked around, feeling a cold anger gradually replace the initial shock and pain. He noticed a framed picture sitting on the TV stand of him, Connor, and Vanessa when they went skiing together in Colorado. The three of them smiled brightly and looked so happy. Nathan remembers that trip. He worked a full month of overtime so he could take a week off, and Connor decided to join on the fly. Now he understood why. Nathan picked up the picture frame and stared at Connor's smile, wondering if he'd been having an affair with Vanessa even then. A blind rage surged through him, and he threw the frame at the wall, the glass shattering on impact with a satisfying crack. He continued to roam the apartment, shredding or breaking every picture he found that had Connor and Vanessa in it. Group photos on the bookshelf, magnet photos on the fridge, even old postcards hidden in a drawer. Every image became fuel for his rage, and every destruction brought fleeting satisfaction. As he walked to the kitchen, he saw a note taped to the refrigerator that read, in Vanessa's trademark flowery script, "Meet me tomorrow at 2 p.m. Bring ultrasound photos. If all goes well, we can start planning to tell Nathan the truth. Love you, V." Nathan felt a wave of vertigo and had to hold on to the kitchen counter to stay on his feet. They've gone for an ultrasound? He and Vanessa hadn't even told anyone she was pregnant yet, wanting to wait until after the 3-month safety period. During this time, Connor not only knew, but accompanied her to her checkups, and they were even planning how to tell Nathan the truth. Were they going to tell him the baby was Connor's? Or are you going to continue to lie to him and let him raise another man's child? In either case, the depth of this betrayal is breathtaking. Rage spread like poison through Nathan, spreading from his heart to his fingertips, every inch of his skin on fire. It was no longer a confused emotional outburst, but had become a cold, calculating rage, one that could guide him to methodical retaliation. He walks over to Connor's closet, a huge walk-in closet filled with custom suits, designer shirts, and pricey shoes. Connor was always proud of his attire and always joked that his closet was worth more than Nathan's car. Now, these expensive fabrics will be the first target of Nathan's revenge. He yanked out a shirt and pants, not tossing them randomly on the floor, but methodically cutting each one with kitchen scissors. The sound of scissors cutting through silk and wool brought him a twisted sense of satisfaction. He took special care of clothes that he knew Vanessa had picked out or complimented, cutting them into irreparable pieces. His fingers ached from the exertion and his nails left bloody marks on his skin, but he didn't stop. The physical pain couldn't compare to his inner torment. Instead, it became a strange release. After completing the destruction of the clothing, he turned to Connor's other possessions. He smashed the full-length mirror in his bedroom and watched his image distort in the broken glass, as fragmented as his life. He swept the books off the shelves, paying special attention to those Vanessa had given Connor, tearing out the intimate inscription on the title page. On the wall, he wrote words like liar, betrayer, and wife stealer with a found marker, too big and bold to ignore. He even painted a huge question mark on the white wall in the living room with your best friend written underneath. He wants Connor to be reminded every day of what he's done, every wall accusing him of betrayal. His anger can't be quelled and can only be released by destroying Connor's property. But this is more than indiscriminate destruction. It's a message, a declaration. You took everything from me, and now I'm going to take yours. As he walked into the bathroom, he saw Connor's razor and aftershave. Expensive bottles of perfume are neatly arranged on shelves, and carefully placed personal care products demonstrate Connor's obsession with his appearance. Nathan remembered that Connor was always clean-shaven because Vanessa used to say she didn't like stubble. The thought made him even angrier. He grabbed the aftershave and cologne and opened one bottle after another, pouring them on the floor, then the bed, the couch, anywhere he could. The scent of the perfume was strong to the point of being suffocating, mixing together to form a horrible odor, like the stench their friendship and trust had been twisted into. He walked to the kitchen and opened the refrigerator, finding all the food and drinks and dumping them on the floor in a disgusting concoction. It gave him a dark satisfaction to imagine Connor stepping into the mess when he returned, to imagine his frustration as he tried to clean up the mess. Then he pulled out his lighter, one of those expensive Zippo lighters that Connor always carried with him. He stared at the tiny flame for a second, thinking, no, he can't do that. As much as he wants to burn Connor's whole world to the ground, he won't make a criminal out of himself. He has better ways of getting revenge that don't involve criminal offenses. Instead, he picked up the phone and dialed Connor's number. He needed to hear the voice of the betrayer, needed to let him know he had been found out. The phone is connected. Hello. Connor's voice sounded cautious, like he already knew what was going on. Maybe Vanessa has contacted him about what happened at the party. She told you, didn't she? Nathan's voice was frighteningly calm, like the calm before a storm. Nathan, look, I can explain, Connor began to say, with tension and fear in his voice. I'm at your house, Nathan interrupts, his voice smooth but threatening. Just read your emails. Saw those pictures. Also saw the note for the ultrasound tomorrow. There was silence on the other end of the line, only the faint sound of breathing indicating that Connor was still on the line. When did it start? Nathan asked, the calm in his voice disturbing. When exactly did this start? 2 years ago? Earlier? Was it like this from the beginning? I didn't want it to be like this, Connor finally said, a distinct note of guilt in his voice, but also a sickening undertone of defensiveness. It just happened, and we all got drunk, and… Nathan laughed, that creepy laugh like it came from the depths of his soul. That's your excuse? Alcohol. You coward. You could have refused. You can be a real friend and tell me she's interested in you. But you didn't. Instead, you chose to betray me. You chose to steal my wife. You chose to mock me behind my back. Connor took a deep breath. I know I hurt you, and I'm sorry, but Vanessa's pregnant, and it's my baby, and I can't just… Nathan interrupted him again, his voice cold enough to freeze lava. Where is she? What? Vanessa, where is she? I left her outside the party. Connor was silent for a moment, obviously weighing how to answer. She was with me, he finally admitted, and she called me crying that you had left her on the side of the road. I'm going to pick her up. Good, Nathan said, an icy satisfaction in his voice. You two betrayers deserve to be together. Tell her she's got an hour to take her stuff. Then I'm going to change the locks. Oh, and by the way, you better come back and check on your apartment. I thought you might not like my decorating style. He hung up, a twisted sense of satisfaction welling up in him. The first wave of vengeance has begun, but it's only the beginning. He had more plans, more thorough ways to get revenge. Emails and photos safely stored on a flash drive will be key evidence of his next move. They will pay for betrayal, and he will make sure of it. Nathan drove home, his thoughts confused but with a clear goal in mind. His hands clenched on the steering wheel as the night scene of San Francisco whizzed by out the window, neon signs and streetlights twisting and distorting in the rain like a mapping of his twisted emotions. He's going to completely cut Vanessa off from his life before he decides how to completely destroy Connor. Not impulsive vandalism, but carefully planned revenge, a revenge that would make them feel the same depth of pain that he felt. When he walked into their luxury apartment in Pacific Heights, he could barely breathe. This home he put a huge down payment on. This place he spent countless weekends hand decorating. This space he once thought of as a bastion of happiness now looks like a monument to his stupidity and naivety. There were traces of her around every corner. The expensive cashmere blanket in the living room that she'd bought on vacation in Italy, the mugs in the kitchen that she'd collected from all over the world, the wedding and vacation photos hanging on the walls, all those memories that they'd accumulated together and that now seemed completely false. He picked up the wedding photo that sat on the TV stand. They looked so happy and in love as they smiled at each other in front of the church. Connor was standing right next to him, as his best man, with what now seemed like a completely false smile on his face. Nathan heaved the picture frame to the floor, glass shards flying everywhere like a physical manifestation of his broken marriage. He walked into the bedroom, the California king-size bed they'd shared for 5 years. Expensive Egyptian cotton sheets used to be Vanessa's pride and joy, and she always said they made her feel like a princess. Now that I think about it, how many lies has she told him in this bed? When he returns from his business trip and they are warmly reunited, has she just returned from Connor's embrace? Did she compare the two of them in this bed? Does it fantasize about being Connor when Nathan hugs her? Nausea surged through him, and he rushed into the master bathroom, bending over the toilet and vomiting until all that remained in his stomach was bitter bile. He washed his face with cold water and looked up at himself in the mirror. Pale face, red eyes, tight jaw. He barely recognized himself. Was this betrayed, mocked man really him? Anger welled up again, giving him the strength to keep moving. He dried his face and walked back into the bedroom, pulling open Vanessa's closet. Her clothes hung neatly, sorted by color and season, showing her obsession with detail. He couldn't help but think of how many times she'd complained about not having enough clothes, how many times he'd bought her new clothes just to see the smile on her face. He began throwing his clothes into a large garbage bag, moving calmly and methodically. Expensive designer dresses, silk blouses, woolen coats, all ruthlessly stuffed into black plastic bags. He didn't care what they were worth, didn't care that some of them were gifts to her at the cost of his massive paycheck. He wanted nothing more than to erase every trace of her existence, just as she had erased the authenticity of their marriage. When he pulled open her drawer, under a pile of carefully folded underwear, he found a small box that looked like a jewelry box. He opened it, and it contained a men's watch, not just any watch, but a Patek Philippe, worth over $20,000. Nathan recognized it as the one Connor had always wanted, and he had once drunkenly remarked at a men's night that if he could one day afford that watch, he'd know he'd made it. Attached to the box is a small card that reads in Vanessa's elegant handwriting, "To my love, thank you for the most wonderful gift in my life. Love you always, V." Nathan's hands were shaking as anger and pain wove through him. It was a gift for Connor, probably to celebrate the news of the pregnancy. Together, they chose the best gift of their lives, while he was kept in the dark and continued to play the role of loyal husband like a stupid clown. Even more ironically, he realizes that Vanessa used what may have been their joint funds to purchase the watch. His money was used to buy gifts for his wife's lovers. The insult is simply unbearable. He threw the watch to the ground and crushed the crystal on the face with his heel, hearing the sound of shattering glass, giving him a twisted hint of satisfaction. He imagined Connor's face when he saw the ruined piece of expensive gift, imagined his pain when he realized what he had lost. He continued his search, rummaging through every drawer, checking every place where a secret might be hidden. Under her dresser, tucked under a stack of old magazines, he found a small journal with a soft leather cover and the words "My Secret" stamped in gold. He flipped it over and found a record of the dates and times of her dates with Connor, sometimes with short descriptions. Today at the lake with C, almost discovered by Anne. He didn't notice anything like a fool. Spend wonderful afternoon with C at his apartment. Tell Anne I'm going to yoga. He'll never doubt it. And C was especially enthusiastic today, saying he wanted to be with me forever. It would be nice to get rid of Anne, but right now we all need his financial support. Each record was like a knife plunged into Nathan's heart. It's not just betrayal, it's outright ridicule and exploitation. He used to think they were a team, working together to build a life, when in reality, she was just using him as an ATM and a shield. Nathan's chest ached as if someone had struck his heart repeatedly with a fist. But he read on, forcing himself to face the betrayal on every page, to record every lie, every deception. These would be the ammunition for his vengeance, and he would make sure that every bullet hit its target. Until he turned to a page that read, "The doctor confirmed that I am pregnant. Not sure if it's N or C, but I hope it's C's. And has always wanted kids, but C is the one who really makes me happy. If it's an N, I don't know what to do. Maybe we can wait until the baby is born and sneak in a paternity test." Nathan sat paralyzed on the floor, the journal slipping from between his feeble fingers. She's not even sure whose baby it is, but hopes it's Connor's. How ironic that he thought they had been trying to have a child just for them, while she was hoping to carry another man's seed. Every doctor's appointment, every ovulation test, every hopeful reassurance after a negative pregnancy test is an elaborate scam. A hysterical laugh erupted from his throat, shrill and hollow, echoing through the empty bedroom, quickly turning to sobs. His body trembled with the intensity of his emotions, his fingers gripping the carpet as if it were his only anchor to prevent him from breaking down completely. But he wouldn't allow himself to succumb to grief, not now. Grief can wait. Now is the time for anger, for vengeance. He wiped away his tears and took a deep breath, picking up the journal and adding it to his collection of evidence. The diary would become a key part of his plan, one that would completely destroy Vanessa and Connor. He stood up and looked around what had once been his home, now an empty shell, full of lies and betrayal. His eyes fell on the wedding photo on the nightstand when they looked so happy. He picks up the photo and removes it from the frame, tearing it into pieces slowly and purposefully, just as he is about to tear their lives apart. The doorbell rang, interrupting his thoughts. Nathan looked at his watch and was surprised to see that 2 hours had passed. Time passes so quickly in anger and pain. He took a deep breath and gathered his emotions, ready to face the two betrayers. He walked through the spacious corridors of his apartment, each step seeming like a step toward the final confrontation. Through his hand-designed open-plan living room, which had once been filled with laughter and love, there were now only echoes of betrayal. His fingers paused on the doorknob for a second, then firmly opened the door. Vanessa stood there, her eyes red and swollen, obviously having cried. Her makeup was spent, and her once perfect image was now a mess. She was wearing a jacket Nathan had never seen before, apparently Connor's, with sleeves so long they covered her fingers. Connor stood behind her, one hand resting protectively on her shoulder, as if he had the right to protect her. His face wore a strange mix of guilt and challenge, as if he was simultaneously sorry for his actions and proud of his choices. "I came to get my things," Vanessa whispered, her voice hoarse from crying. Her green eyes lifted to look at Nathan with some sort of expectation, as if she hoped he would soften, would forgive her, would let things go back to the way they were. But that's no longer possible. Nathan stepped back and indifferently let them in, his face as hard as stone. Every muscle in his body tensed, controlled not to lunge at Connor, not to slam his fist into that once familiar face. "You've got 30 minutes, he said, his voice quiet but incontrovertible, "and I've got most of it packed." He points to the garbage bags piled in the middle of the living room, black plastic bags filled with expensive fabrics and personal belongings, like discarded hopes and dreams. Vanessa looked shocked. Her eyes widened in disbelief as she stared at the pile of garbage bags. "You threw my clothes in a garbage bag?" she asked, incredulity in her voice, as if it were the greatest insult to her dignity. "Those are designer clothes. Some of them are worth thousands of dollars." Nathan shrugged, a cold expression on his face. That's how garbage should be treated. There wasn't a trace of emotion in his voice, as if he were discussing the weather rather than their marriage. Connor took a step forward, anger flashing in his eyes. His jaw was tight, obviously in control of his emotions. "Look, I know you're angry, but you don't have to dash." Nathan turned to him, the ice in his eyes bringing Connor's words to a screeching halt. It wasn't ordinary anger, it was a deep-seated hatred, a hatred that could change a person. "You have no business talking in my house," Nathan hissed, his voice low and dangerous. "In fact, You have no business even setting foot in my house. You, my best friend, go behind my back to my wife's bed, laugh at me behind my back, and then have the nerve to stand here and tell me how I should act? So before I change my mind, help her get her stuff and get out." Connor took a step back, the anger on his face replaced by shame. He lowered his head, not daring to look Nathan in the eye, like a child caught doing something wrong. Vanessa starts walking around the house, collecting her belongings. Her movements were panicked, and her eyes kept glancing at Nathan as if she was worried he would burst out of nowhere. She picked up the picture frames, jewelry box, and makeup and stuffed them into the bag Connor had brought. As she walked into the bedroom, a gasp came from her. A few moments later, she ran out, holding the broken Patek Philippe watch. The crystal surface had shattered and the hand stopped at some timeless moment, just like their relationship. "You broke this?" she questioned, anger and incredulity in her voice, tears welling up again. "This is my gift to Connor. Do you know how much this is worth? It's irreplaceable." Nathan pretended to think about it for a moment, tapping his fingers lightly on his chin and making a surprised face. "Oh yeah? I thought that was garbage. Just like our marriage. But I'm curious, Vanessa, did you buy this watch with our joint money? Buy your lover a gift with my hard-earned money?" His tone was calm, but his eyes were as sharp as blades, each word carefully chosen to inflict maximum damage. Vanessa's face turned pale, and she was speechless because Nathan was telling the truth. She did use their joint funds, money that should have been used for their future, to purchase this expensive gift. Connor stepped forward again, this time with both anger and pleading in his eyes. "That's enough, Nathan. I know we're hurting you, but this isn't going to solve anything. We can handle this like adults." Nathan stared at his former friend, his former brother, his current enemy. His eyes were filled with contempt and icy anger. "Problem solving? You think I'm trying to fix things? No, I'm just cleaning up the trash. When you and my wife were cheating on me behind my back, when you were laughing at me in emails and comparing us in bed, did it ever occur to you to handle it like adults?" Nathan walked over to the desk and pulled out the flash drive, spinning it gently between his fingers. "By the way, I copied all your emails and photos. Those intimate photos of you while I was traveling, those nasty emails you exchanged, and—" He paused for a moment, his gaze turning to Vanessa. "Your funny little diary. Trust me, I'll put them to good use." Connor's face is pale, and sweat forms tiny beads on his upper lip. "What are you going to do?" His voice was almost a whisper, full of fear. Nathan laughed, this time with real malice, a dark satisfaction he didn't recognize in himself. "I haven't decided yet. Maybe send it to all our friends? Your parents? The ones who are always telling me what a good friend you are? Or your boss? After all, the company is very strict about office romances, especially if one of the parties is your subordinate." Vanessa works in the marketing department and Connor is her direct supervisor, which is exactly how they met. The company has a strict policy prohibiting supervisors from having relationships with subordinates, and violating this policy can result in immediate termination, especially at a large company like Rivertech. Connor and Vanessa exchanged a panicked look, clearly realizing the gravity of the situation. It's not just personal anymore. It's about their careers, their financial security, their entire future. "You won't," Vanessa said, but the lack of confidence in her voice was more of a prayer than a statement. "You've always overestimated my kindness, Vanessa," Nathan said coldly, "just as I've overestimated your loyalty. Now, go ahead and pack your stuff. It's almost time. You only have 15 minutes left." He took up position in the center of the living room, arms crossed as he watched the unfaithful couple hastily gather the remaining items. There was no sadness in his eyes, no hesitation, only cold determination. This was only the first step in his plan for revenge, and already he felt a dark satisfaction. Vanessa and Connor finished packing as quickly as they could under Nathan's icy gaze. A tense silence filled the living room, broken only by the sound of garbage bags rubbing together and Vanessa's occasional sobs. Connor's movements were stiff and flustered, obviously not used to this situation. As the head of the company's marketing department, he is always confident and adept at handling any situation. But now, under the hate-filled gaze of his former best friend, his confidence crumbled completely. Vanessa tries to maintain a sense of dignity, But a flash of pain flashes across her face every time she sees her prized possessions roughly shoved into a garbage bag. She was once the hostess of the house and the shining star of Rivertech's annual party. Now she is reduced to a betrayer and thrown out of her own home. As they prepare to leave, Vanessa takes a deep breath and tries to regain some control. She straightened her hair, straightened her back, and turned to Nathan. "We need to talk about the divorce," she said, a forced businesslike tone in her voice, "and the division of property. We bought the house together, and I'm entitled to half the value." Nathan laughed, a laugh filled with sarcasm and ice. "Don't worry, my lawyer will be in touch. In fact, I've contacted the best divorce lawyer in town, Howard Vincent. He's looking forward to seeing all this interesting evidence I've collected." He gestured to the flash drive and the journal, seeing the fear flash across Vanessa's face, giving him a hint of satisfaction. Howard Vincent is notoriously ruthless in San Francisco, specializing in representing clients betrayed by their spouses and never compromising. "Oh yeah," he added, pulling something out of his pocket. "You forgot this." He threw a ring at her, the platinum diamond ring, the token he'd spent 3 months' salary on when they were married. The ring landed on the floor, bouncing a few times on the hardwood floor with a harsh, metallic sound before finally coming to rest at her feet. "I don't need it anymore, just like I don't need you anymore. It feels like a red-hot coal in my pocket." Vanessa bent down to pick up the ring, her fingers trembling, tears in her eyes. The diamond shimmered in the light, an ironic reminder of the eternal promise they had made. "Nathan, please." Her voice shattered, no longer the confident woman but a pleading stranger. "I know what I did was wrong, but we can deal with this in a civilized manner. For our own sake and for the sake of—" Her hand rested unconsciously on her abdomen. "For this baby." Nathan shook his head, the coldness in his eyes not diminished in the slightest. "Civilization? Is it as civilized as you going behind my back to my best friend's bed? As civilized as you are when you write in your diary that you wish the baby wasn't mine?" He took a step forward, his voice low and dangerous. "Don't try to manipulate me with that, child. Vanessa, I read your diary, remember? I know you're not even sure whose baby it is. Maybe you should check with David Morrison and see if he'd like to be a dad." Vanessa's face turned pale and her lips parted slightly, clearly shocked that he knew about David. "What?" Nathan sneered. "Think I won't find out about your third lover? Do you guys really think I'm that stupid?" Puzzlement and shock flashed across Connor's face. Obviously, he didn't know about David either. This realization brought Nathan a twisted sense of satisfaction. It seems there is no real loyalty among betrayers either. "Get out of my house," Nathan finally said, his voice calm but threatening. "And don't let me see your face again. Next time, we'll communicate only through our lawyers." Connor put his hand on Vanessa's back and gently pushed her towards the door. Vanessa looks like she wants to say something, but ultimately just bites her lip and keeps her emotions in check. As they were about to leave, Nathan suddenly spoke up. "Oh, Connor." Connor looked back at him with a wary expression on his face, as if anticipating a physical attack. "Check your mail," Nathan said, a sneer emerging from the corner of his mouth. "I sent you something. I think your boss, parents, and our mutual friends will find them very enlightening." Connor was pale, and fine beads of sweat broke out on his forehead, but did not speak, only clung to the doorknob as if it were his only support. "Oh, and one more thing," Nathan added, with an uneasy calmness in his voice. "I've made an appointment to meet with Jackson in Human Resources tomorrow. You know, the VP who has zero tolerance for office romances? I think he would be very interested in your relationship with your subordinates." Vanessa let out a low whimper, while Connor just nodded mechanically, his expression like that of a condemned prisoner. Then they walked out the door in silence, taking their garbage bags and shame with them. After the door closed, Nathan stood in the center of the living room and looked around the space that had once been filled with love and hope. Now it's just an empty shell filled with the ghosts of memories. But he won't let these ghosts haunt him for long. He has begun his revenge, and this is only the beginning. As soon as they left, Nathan locked the door and pulled out his cell phone. He opens Connor's social media accounts and thanks them for the days when they used to know each other's passwords. He started posting and sharing those screenshots of intimate emails he found on Connor's computer, blurring the most sensitive parts beforehand, of course. The accompanying text is simple. It's funny how life works when your best friend and your wife betray you. He knew it might be a bit much, but he didn't care. He wanted them to feel the same pain, the same public humiliation. He clicks publish and collapses on the couch, exhausted. Immediately, his cell phone began to vibrate as notifications poured in one by one, friends and colleagues reacting to the explosive post. Some expressed shock, others support, and still others just posted sad emoticons. Nathan turned off his cell phone and stared at the ceiling. This was the beginning of his revenge, but it was far from over. He needed a more comprehensive plan, a way for them to never escape the consequences of their betrayal. Tears slid silently down his cheeks, not from sadness, but from sheer anger and humiliation. But he knew that tears were superfluous. Action is the only cure, and he's just getting going. Over the next few days, Nathan wandered through his life like a ghost. He called in sick, not wanting to face the whispers and sympathetic looks in the office. His social media exploded, with some condemning him for going public with something so personal, but many more voiced their support, accusing Vanessa and Connor of betrayal. Nathan doesn't care about those who criticize him. He just wants to make those two betrayers pay. He contacted a divorce attorney, a man known for his ruthlessness in divorce cases. The lawyer's eyes lit up as he described the situation. Cheating, deception, pregnancy uncertainty. It's a favorable case, Mr. Bradford. We can ask for full emotional damages, all joint property, and even use the fact that this child may not be yours as a bargaining chip. Nathan nodded with a twisted sense of satisfaction. Do what you can, he said. I don't want to leave her with anything. The lawyer smiled. That's exactly what I specialize in. The next day, Nathan received a call from the company's human resources department. Mr. Bradford, a serious voice said, we need to discuss the Connor Williams and Vanessa Bradford situation. An inappropriate office relationship between them was reported to us, in violation of our policy, especially in light of the supervisory relationship. Can you provide some information? Nathan held on to the phone. Of course, he said calmly. I have all the evidence you need. He again sent the email he had obtained from Connor's computer, this time to human resources. Later that afternoon, he received a confirmation email thanking him for his report and informing him that they were handling the matter. 3 days later, he heard that Connor and Vanessa had been suspended for investigation. The news sent a wave of pleasure through Nathan, but it wasn't enough. He has more plans. Friday night, Nathan sat at his kitchen table with a series of papers spread out in front of him. He'd been studying his and Vanessa's joint bank accounts and credit card statements, looking for any expenditures that might indicate her relationship with Connor. He found several questionable hotel charges that far exceeded what she claimed she should have spent on a night of drinking with her girlfriends. He also found a receipt from an expensive jewelry store dated exactly 1 week before Connor's birthday. All of these become strong evidence in a divorce case. His cell phone rang, an unfamiliar number. After a moment's hesitation, he answered the phone. Is it Nathan? A female voice asked. Yes, he replied, unsure of who the other man was. I'm Lisa, Connor's sister, the voice said, sounding a little uneasy. I know you probably don't want to talk to me, but I need to see you. It's about Vanessa and Connor. Nathan's curiosity is piqued. What? He asked, his tone cautious. I have some information that you might be interested in, Lisa replied. The truth about the beginning of their relationship. I can't say it over the phone, but I think you have a right to know. Nathan thought for a moment. Connor's sister has always been on friendly terms with him, even before Connor and he became friends. If she wants to see him, it probably does matter. Well, he finally agreed. Tomorrow at noon, at the city cafe. The next day, Nathan arrived at the cafe early and chose a seat overlooking the door. He doesn't fully trust the meeting and worries that it might be a trap set by Connor or Vanessa, but he was relieved when Lisa walked in alone. She looked exhausted and had deep dark circles under her eyes. Thank you for wanting to see me, she said as she sat down. I know this has been hard for you. Nathan just nodded and waited for her to continue. Lisa took a deep breath. I think you should know that there's more to Connor and Vanessa than just the last few months. Nathan frowned. What do you mean? Lisa looked at her hands. They had a relationship before you were married. Nathan felt a wave of vertigo. What? That's not possible. He and Vanessa have been together for 6 years and married for 5. That means… Yes, Lisa confirmed, as if reading his thoughts. When Vanessa started dating you, she was still with Connor. In fact, she paused as if considering whether or not to say it. They never really broke up. Nathan felt a sharp pain in his chest, as if someone had hit him with a hammer. How do you know all this? He managed to ask, his voice hoarse. Lisa pulled a notebook out of her bag. Connor has been in the habit of keeping a journal since we were kids. I went to his house last week to help him pack some things and found this. She pushed her laptop across the desk. I shouldn't have watched it, but I inadvertently caught a glimpse of Vanessa's name in it. Continue reading. I think you have a right to know. Nathan flipped open his notebook with a shaky hand. Connor's scrawled but legible handwriting on the page reads, "With V today." She said she was going to meet with Nathan, but we both knew she'd eventually come back to me. That's our game, always has been. Another page reads, "V says Nathan proposed to her. She accepted." We laughed all night imagining what his face would look like when he realized the truth. But she says we need to be more careful. It only makes the game more exciting. Nathan was so sickened, he couldn't keep reading. How long did this last? He asked, his voice barely audible. Lisa's eyes were full of sympathy. According to his diary, it was from the beginning. It never stops. Nathan closed the notebook and pushed it back to Lisa. Why are you telling me this? He asked. He's your brother. A flash of pain crossed Lisa's face. Because it's wrong, she said simply. I love my brother, but I can't support him in this. You're a good man, Nathan. You don't deserve to be treated like this. She stood up and left her notebook on the table. You can keep it if you want. It might be useful in your divorce case. She turned to leave, but then stopped. And another thing, she said, almost a whisper, that child? I don't think it's his. Nathan looked up at her, confused. What do you mean? Connor told me he couldn't have kids, Lisa explains. He had tests last year, and the doctor said his sperm count was extremely low. It is almost impossible to conceive naturally. So if Vanessa is pregnant. She didn't finish, but the meaning was clear. If Connor couldn't be the father, and Vanessa was sure it wasn't Nathan's child, then there had to be a third person. Back home, Nathan began systematically planning his next move. He sat in his study, the computer screen in front of him illuminating his tired but determined face. This once cozy room is now the center of his strategy, a command post for plotting his revenge. First, he photographed key pages of the diary and sent them to his divorce attorney, Howard Vincent, as strong evidence of Vanessa's chronic deception. The lawyer replied quickly, "That's perfect, Mr. Bradford. These elements would raise serious questions about her character for the judge. I will prepare the papers immediately." He then began drafting an email address to all of his and Vanessa's mutual friends and family. He spent 2 hours meticulously writing it, making sure that each word conveyed his pain and anger without making him look like a madman or too vindictive. The subject of the email was simple: the truth you need to know. In the main article, he included photos of his diary, detailing how he was lied to and betrayed, not just for a few months, but for 6 whole years. He describes how they turned his life into a cruel joke and laughed at him behind his back. He also mentioned questions about the identity of the child's father, suggesting that there may be others involved. Finally, he wrote, "I am not writing this email to seek sympathy, but for the truth. For 6 years I lived a lie, deceived by those I trusted most. I think you all have a right to know the truth, especially considering they may have lied to you as well. I don't expect anyone to pick sides, only that the truth be known." His finger hovered over the send button, but at the last minute he decided to save it as a draft. Not because of hesitation, but because he wanted to make sure the timing was perfect. He wanted to wait until he had gathered more evidence, until he could be sure that the email would do the most damage. Next, Nathan contacted a private investigation firm. He did some research in the morning and found one of the highest-rated companies in San Francisco that specializes in handling marital investigations. He dialed the number and set up a meeting for the next morning. The next day, he walks into a nondescript office building to the Meridian Investigations office on the top floor. The receptionist, an older lady with sharp, professional eyes, immediately put Nathan at ease. A few minutes later, he was ushered into a small conference room to meet the lead investigator, Jack Donovan, a retired police detective with a large frame and sharp eyes. "Mr. Bradford." Donovan extended his hand in a strong but brief handshake. "I understand your situation. What services would you like us to provide?" Nathan takes a deep breath and looks Donovan straight in the eye. I need you to follow my wife, he told the investigator, his voice low and firm. I want to know who she saw, where she went, and especially any evidence that might indicate she had a third lover. I already knew she was having an affair with my ex-best friend Connor Williams, but recent circumstances suggest there may be others. Donovan nods and pulls out a notebook and starts taking notes. Do you have any leads? Any possible names or locations? Nathan took out his flash drive and plugged it into the computer in the conference room. Here are some email exchanges that might be useful. There's one guy, David Morrison, who's her ex-boyfriend, and I suspect he might be the third. Donovan checks the email, his brow furrowing slightly. These are really worth investigating. We'll start with this Morrison. Do you have a picture of him? Nathan shook his head. Just names and some old social media accounts. We knew him from our college days, but he's since gone abroad for work. It seems to have come back recently. Enough, Donovan said, closing his notebook. We'll keep a low profile and conduct a full surveillance. How often would you like to receive reports? Every day, Nathan replied without hesitation. Whatever is found, I want to know. Cost is not an issue. Donovan nodded his understanding, assuring him that he would begin his investigation as soon as possible and report back regularly. On the way out of the investigation, Nathan felt a strange calm. Knowing that professionals were helping him uncover all the truth gave him a sense of control, something he'd lost since he'd discovered the betrayal. Then Nathan does something he never thought he'd do. He hacks into Vanessa's email. As a senior systems architect at RiverTech, this wasn't hard for him, especially since she'd never changed those passwords he'd helped her set up. How ironic that she betrayed him while still trusting his technical expertise so much that she didn't even bother to change her password. He sat down at his computer, took a deep breath, and began typing. A few seconds later, he was in her mailbox. The intrusion made him feel a twinge of discomfort, but was then overwhelmed by the rage of betrayal. He has a right to know the truth and to know all the details. He began a systematic search for any possible clue, any communication that might reveal the identity of this possible third individual. He sorted the emails by date, focusing on the most recent months. Most are work-related, with some shopping confirmations and newsletters. But when he searched for David, a series of emails popped up. The emails are mostly vague, but clearly have an ambiguous tone. They communicate under code names. David is D. M. Connor is C, and Nathan is called N. In the most recent one, dated 3 days ago, Vanessa wrote, "Now everything is a mess. N knows about C, but he doesn't know about you. I don't know what to do. The baby issue gets complicated. C thought it was his, but we all know how unlikely that is. I need to see you to discuss next steps. The usual place tomorrow?" Nathan's heart raced and his fingers trembled on the keyboard. That's the proof he needs. But D. M. Who the hell is it? He continued his search and finally found the full name, David Morrison, in an old email. The name was indeed Vanessa's ex-boyfriend, as he suspected. They dated in college, and after an acrimonious breakup, David went abroad to work. Apparently, he's back, and judging by these emails, he and Vanessa have reconnected, not just in friendship, but in a full-blown emotional and physical relationship. Nathan's plan for revenge begins to take shape, clearer and more comprehensive. Now, not only does he have to deal with Connor, but also this David Morrison. He wonders if Connor is aware of David's existence, and if he realizes that he may have been duped as well. The thought brought him a twisted sense of satisfaction. Betrayer also betrayed. What poetic justice. He called his attorney with the newly discovered information. "That's perfect," Vincent said, with obvious excitement in his voice. "It means she's not only cheating on her husband, but she could be involved in fraud. If she led you to believe that the child was yours or Connor's, when in fact it may have been another person's, then that constitutes fraud. We can use this in a divorce proceeding to ask for higher damages and property division." Nathan agreed and then asked another question, one he'd been thinking about. "Is it legal if I report her relationship with Connor to her workplace? I mean, I've done it, but I want to make sure I'm not crossing the line." Vincent mused for a moment, tapping his fingers on the tabletop. "Technically, you're just reporting a violation of company policy. RiverTech has a clear policy prohibiting relationships between supervisors and subordinates, especially undeclared relationships. It's perfectly legal as long as you don't fabricate evidence or make false statements." In fact, many companies encourage employees to report such violations. That's exactly what Nathan wanted to hear. His plan was beginning to take shape. First, he destroyed their careers. Next, he'd completely ruin Vanessa's finances through the divorce. Then, he'd make sure everyone knew what despicable liars they were, including that third person who might have been there. And finally, he'd let Connor know that he'd been lied to, too, and let him have a taste of what it was like to be betrayed. 3 days later, Donovan returned with a set of photographs. They meet at Nathan's apartment, where Donovan pulls out a large envelope and pours out dozens of high-resolution photos. The photo shows Vanessa entering the W Hotel in downtown San Francisco with a tall blonde man. They looked very close, holding hands and stopping to exchange kisses from time to time. In the photo of the hotel lobby, they can clearly be seen checking in at the front desk and then going up the elevator together. "This is David Morrison," Donovan confirmed, pointing to the man who, according to our investigation, returned to San Francisco from London 3 months ago to work for an investment firm. They stayed at the hotel for about 2 hours and then left separately. It seems to be a pattern. We've observed them meeting twice in the last 3 days, always in the afternoon, always at the same hotel. Nathan stared at the photo and felt a wave of mixed emotions. Anger, sure, but also a strange relief. Now that he knows the whole truth, he can completely sever his ties with the past. No more speculation, no more doubts, just the cold, hard facts and his plan for revenge. "Anything else?" he asked, his voice awfully calm. Donovan nods and pulls out another set of photos. She also visited an OB/GYN clinic, Dr. Mitchell's private practice. "I'm not sure why, but given her condition, it could be prenatal." Nathan thought for a moment, tapping his fingers on the photo. It gave him another idea, a way to possibly reveal the child's true father, if he can get a DNA sample. But that might be too much, even for revenge. He decided to put that idea aside for now. "Can you find out if Connor knew about David?" he asked, wondering if there was also deception between the two betrayers. Donovan shrugged. "I could try, but from what I've observed, Vanessa treats everyone with care. She and Connor barely communicate in public, probably because of your social media blitz and the company's investigation." But he paused and pulled out another photo. "We did get this one." The photo shows Connor standing underneath Vanessa's apartment and appears to be arguing loudly. Vanessa's expression is both angry and fearful, while Connor seems to be pleading or questioning. "This was taken yesterday," Donovan explains. "They argued for about 10 minutes, and then he left." Based on the analysis of the lip sync experts, it appears to be an argument about him, possibly referring to a third person. "So yeah, I think Connor might be starting to suspect or already know." Nathan nodded, paid the detective's fee, and asked him to continue his surveillance, paying particular attention to any possible interaction between Connor and David. As all the evidence accumulates, his plan for revenge is becoming more and more refined. That night, Nathan finally decided to send that email. He added the latest photo and message and then clicked send. Within a few minutes, his cell phone started ringing nonstop with notifications. Shocked reactions from friends, worried messages from family, and even comments from people he didn't know flooded his social media accounts. Emails were forwarded, screenshots were shared, and the truth spread like wildfire. "I can't believe Vanessa would do this," one of his friends texted. "She always seemed so in love with you." "Nathan, let me know if you need any help," wrote another friend. "We're all behind you." But there were some critical voices. "Have you thought about addressing these issues privately? It doesn't do anyone any good to publicize these things." Nathan didn't reply to any of the messages, just sat there and watched the digital storm he orchestrated sweep through their social circles. He expected Vanessa to call, angry or pleading, but the phone never rang. Instead, around midnight, his doorbell rang. Nathan walked cautiously toward the door, a baseball bat in his hand as a precaution. Looking out through the cat's eye, he saw Connor, looking haggard, with an expression in his eyes that Nathan had never seen before, pure fear and despair. "Open the door, Nathan," Connor shouted, his voice hoarse and almost broken. "We need to talk. Please." Nathan considered ignoring him, but curiosity and an urge to confront his betrayer took over. He opens the door, but doesn't let Connor in, the baseball bat still in his hand as a silent threat. What's there to talk about? He asked coldly. Connor looked like a beaten man, shoulders slumped, eyes bloodshot, hair disheveled, clothes rumpled as if he'd been wearing them for days. The once confident, charismatic marketing executive now looks like a pale version of his own shadow. Your emails, he said, his voice trembling. Those pictures. David Morrison. Nathan crossed his arms. What, you don't know? Your girlfriend has been cheating on you? Kind of ironic, isn't it? A flash of anger flashed in Connor's eyes, but was quickly replaced by exhaustion. I had no idea, he admitted, until I saw those pictures today. Nathan scoffed. So you felt betrayed? How was it? Did it feel good? Connor shook his head. You don't understand, Nathan. Things are more complicated than you think. Nathan almost laughed out loud. Oh, I understand perfectly well. You and my wife deceived me for 6 years into believing that our marriage was real, when in fact you've been laughing at me. And then she cheated on you and slept with her ex-boyfriend. Now you want my sympathy. Connor looks like he's been slapped. It wasn't like that, he whispered. At least, not at first. Nathan froze. What do you mean? Connor took a deep breath. Vanessa and I did date before you met. When she started dating you, we broke up. It's true. But then, he paused for a moment as if searching for the right words. I don't know. We came together again. At first it was only occasional, but then it became more frequent. Nathan is disgusted. Where's your diary? Those entries about how you've been fooling me from the beginning. Connor frowned. What diary? He looks really confused. Lisa gave me your diary, Nathan said. And it says that you and Vanessa were always together, never really apart. Connor's eyes widened. Lisa gave you. Geez. Nathan, I didn't keep a journal. I never have. Nathan stared at him, unsure of what to believe. That notebook has your handwriting on it, he said, but there was already suspicion in his voice. Connor shook his head. I don't know what notebook you're talking about, but if it has my handwriting on it, it must be a forgery. Nathan thought back to the notebook Lisa had shown him. The handwriting did look like Connor's, but now that he thinks about it, something about that handwriting didn't look natural, like someone was trying to imitate it. Why would Lisa give me a forged diary? He asked, more to himself than anything else. Connor's expression turned somber. Because she hates Vanessa, he said simply, all the time. Ever since we grew up together, Lisa has always been jealous of my girlfriends, especially the girls she thinks are better looking or more successful than her. This is starting to make sense. Lisa always acted friendly to Nathan, especially after he and Vanessa announced their engagement. At the time, he thought it was just a welcome from his family, but now. So you're telling me that you only had an affair with Vanessa after I met her? Like that's any better, Nathan said sarcastically. Connor shook his head. No, I'm not defending myself. What we did was wrong, and I'll never forgive myself for hurting you. But the truth is that the diary was a forgery, and my relationship with Vanessa, wrong as it was not an elaborate hoax as Lisa describes it. Nathan stares at his ex-best friend, unsure how much to believe. What about David? He asked. Do you know anything about her and him? The look on Connor's face told him the answer. I didn't know until I saw the picture today, he admitted. She told me she was going to meet a college friend, and that was it. He gave a bitter laugh. It seems we've all been played by her. Nathan did not respond to this attempt to establish common ground. Why are you here, Connor? Want me to feel sorry for you? Connor shook his head. No, I came to warn you. Vanessa, she's unstable. When she saw that email, those pictures, out of control. Nathan raised an eyebrow. What do you mean? Connor looks disturbed. She threatened to hurt herself, or worse. She says it's all your fault, and if she can't have a happy life, neither can you. Nathan scoffed. So you're here to warn me about my crazy ex-wife? 6 years late. Connor's eyes turned serious. I'm serious, Nathan. I've never seen her like that. She's like a different person. Nathan was just about to answer when his cell phone rang. It was a text message from an unknown number. Look what you've done. Attached is a photo showing Vanessa standing on a bridge overlooking the river below. Nathan felt a pang of fear. Shit, he whispered, showing Connor his cell phone. What bridge is she on? Connor glanced at the photo and turned pale. That's the 5th Street Bridge, near her sister's house. Nathan didn't think twice about grabbing the keys. We've got to get there. As angry and disgusted as he was with Vanessa, he didn't want her to do anything stupid. It wasn't the revenge he wanted. Connor nodded, and the two rushed to Nathan's car. On the way, Nathan called emergency services to report the situation. When they reached the bridge, there were already police cars and ambulances there. Vanessa is surrounded by police, sitting on a bench by the bridge, draped in a blanket. She looked haggard, but apparently alive. Nathan felt a wave of relief, even though his feelings for her had become so complicated. The officer walks toward them. "Are you her husband?" he asked Nathan. Nathan nodded. "I am, but we're getting divorced." The officer sighed. "She said she wanted to kill herself because you ruined her life. We need to get her to a psychiatric evaluation. Do you know if she has a history of suicide or mental health issues?" Nathan shook his head. "No, at least I don't." The officer nodded. "Okay, thanks. We'll take care of it." He turned to walk away, but then stopped. "Oh, and she mentioned she was pregnant. Medical personnel are confirming her and the condition of the fetus." Nathan stood at a distance, watching the paramedics take care of Vanessa. His emotions were confused: anger, guilt, relief, and a strange sense of emptiness. Connor stood next to him, not saying a word. Eventually, Nathan spoke up. "I don't forgive you," he said, his voice calm. "I never will. But I don't want to see anyone die either." Connor nodded. "I understand. And I don't expect forgiveness." They watched in silence as Vanessa was put into the ambulance. As the car door closes, Nathan turns to Connor. "Does Lisa really hate her enough to forge a diary?" Connor sighed. "Lisa has been a bit. Question. She once got in trouble for stalking a boy who rejected her. She is very good at imitating other people's handwriting, which is one of her talents at school." He shook his head. "I should have expected her to do such a thing." After the ambulance drove away, Nathan and Connor stood under the cold night sky. Two former friends, now strangers. "I should go," Connor finally said. "Take care of yourself, Nathan." Nathan nodded without responding. He watched Connor leave, then went back to his car. He sat there, staring at the steering wheel, thinking about everything that had happened in the past few weeks. His plan for revenge has been put into effect. Vanessa and Connor's careers may be over, their reputations ruined, and their relationship crumbling as a result of David's involvement. But he didn't feel the satisfaction he expected. Instead, he felt a deep sense of exhaustion and emptiness. His cell phone rang with a text from his lawyer. "See you in court tomorrow. We have every confidence that we will win the case." Nathan looked at the message and nodded. At the very least, he could legally end the relationship once and for all and get back everything he was cheated out of. It wasn't the victory he thought it would be, but it was all he could get. The next day, Nathan stood in front of the San Francisco Superior Court in his best suit. The morning sun shone on the old building, and the gray stone pillars looked solemn and unshakable, just like his determination at the moment. His lawyer, Howard Vincent, was already waiting for him on the steps, thick folder in hand. Vincent is a legend, notorious in Bay Area divorce circles for his take-no-prisoners tactics and near-perfect win record. His Oxfords were polished, his suit was obviously tailored, and his meticulously groomed gray hair was slicked back. He looked just like his reputation, snarky and precise. "Mr. Bradford," Vincent extended his hand, the grip strong and dry. "Are you ready? Today will be a critical day." Nathan nodded. He was ready. He barely slept last night, but not out of nervousness, but out of anticipation. It's the culmination of his vengeance to legally destroy Vanessa as completely as she destroyed his trust and marriage. "I've informed the court about Mrs. Bradford's incident last night," Vincent whispered, leading Nathan into the courtroom. "And it can only benefit us. It proves that she is emotionally unstable and may not be capable of caring for the child, if it is indeed yours. It's part of their plan." Although Nathan has pretty much established that the child is not his, they still fight for custody and then request a paternity test. It was a tactical move to put more pressure on Vanessa. Her lawyers tried to ask for a postponement, citing her medical condition as the reason. Vincent continued, an icy smile appearing at the corners of his mouth. "But I've managed to convince the judge to go ahead. After all, this is a simple asset division case that doesn't require her presence." They walk into the courtroom, and Nathan immediately notices that Vanessa's seat is empty. Her attorney, Alexandra Torres, sat with a serious expression. Torres is a young attorney with an emerging reputation for handling high-net-worth divorces, but she's still a novice compared to Vincent. The judge, a serious woman in her 60s, Judge Rita Chun, walked into the courtroom. She is known for her severity and fairness and has nearly 2 decades of experience in family court. Shall we begin? Judge Chen asked, her sharp gaze sweeping the room. Where is Mrs. Bradford? Torres stood up. Honorable Judge, as stated in our previously filed request, my client is currently in the hospital undergoing treatment. We ask for a postponement. Vincent stood up as well, his stance full of confidence. Your Honor, this is a simple case of asset division. We have submitted all the necessary documents and evidence. Mrs. Bradford's absence should not prevent us from proceeding, especially given the clarity of the case. Judge Chen thinks for a moment, then nods. I agree with Mr. Vincent. I have reviewed the submissions, and the evidence seems fairly clear. We will continue to do so. The next 2 hours were a legal massacre. Vincent systematically presents the evidence of Vanessa's infidelity, emails, photographs, bank records, and even the forged diary, which he deftly describes as allegedly Mr. Williams' diary, to avoid the possibility of perjury. He showed how Vanessa used joint funds to buy gifts for her lover, how she used their credit cards to pay for hotels while Nathan was traveling on business, and how she may have lied to Nathan about the child's paternity. Torres tries to retort, but she has limited material on hand. She can't deny the infidelity and can only try to get a fairer division of property. Judge Chen, however, appears to have been persuaded by the evidence presented by Vincent. Finally, Judge Chen announced her verdict. In light of all the evidence presented, I find that Mrs. Bradford's conduct constituted a material breach of the marriage. Not only did she have an extramarital affair, but she also attempted to lie to Mr. Bradford about the paternity of the children and used co-funding to support those relationships. Accordingly, I rule as follows. All community property goes to Mr. Bradford, including the principal residence and all investment accounts. Mrs. Bradford shall pay moral damages to Mr. Bradford in the amount of $500,000. $500,000. With respect to the custody of the child, I order a paternity test to determine paternity. Temporary custody goes to Mr. Bradford pending the outcome. The judgment is effective immediately. The judge banged the gavel and the judgment was entered. Nathan felt a wave of vertigo and could hardly believe he had just won it all. He had expected a victory, but he hadn't expected it to be so complete. Vincent threw him a winning smile as he executed his tactic perfectly. Stepping out of the courtroom, Nathan took a deep breath of fresh air. His marriage is officially over, and he gets everything: the house, the money, and even possible custody rights, even though he already knows the child may not be his. But most importantly, he gets justice, and he proves that Vanessa's behavior was wrong and deserves to be punished. Vincent shook his hand on the steps. Congratulations, Mr. Bradford. It was one of the most complete victories I've ever seen. You are now free and richer than ever. Nathan nodded and watched his lawyer leave. He should have felt the joy of victory, but instead, he felt a strange emptiness. Revenge is complete. He has destroyed Vanessa and Connor's lives just as they destroyed his. But it didn't bring the satisfaction he had hoped for. Instead, he felt a deep exhaustion, like depletion after a long battle. He decided to go to the office. Even in the midst of this personal catastrophe, his work remains the anchor of his life, the thing that keeps him sane. As he walked into the Rivertech building, he noticed a change in people's attitudes toward him. Some avoided his gaze, others looked at him with a kind of pity, and still others gave him encouraging smiles and nods. Obviously, everyone in the company knew what was going on. Social media and corporate gossip ensures this. Nathan walked into his office, closed the door, and immersed himself in his work, trying to rid his mind of the tumultuous thoughts. A few hours later, his phone rang. It's an unknown number. After a moment's hesitation, he answered the phone. Nathan Bradford. His voice was professional and calm. Mr. Bradford, I'm Dr. Meyer Hospital. Mitchell. A female voice said, I'm taking care of your wife, Vanessa Bradford. Nathan corrected, ex-wife. We're officially divorced today. The doctor paused. I understand, but I'm contacting you because of an emergency. After Ms. Bradford was brought in last night, we did a thorough examination. She was 16 weeks pregnant, but we found some complications that required urgent treatment. Nathan frowned. What does that have to do with me? Legally, you are still listed as her emergency contact. And, according to the court's temporary judgment, you now have temporary custody of the child. We need your consent to perform the necessary medical procedures. Nathan held onto the phone. Even at this point, Vanessa is still causing problems in his life. The baby may not be mine, he said calmly. I understand, the doctor said, professional neutrality in his voice. But legally you are still responsible until the results of the paternity test come back. And no matter who the father of the child is, it's an innocent life. Nathan closed his eyes and thought for a moment. Even though his feelings for Vanessa have turned to hate, he's not a cruel man. He didn't want an innocent child to suffer because of a parent's mistake. What do you need me to do? He finally asked. We need your written consent for a procedure. Forms can be emailed to you. The surgery is to stabilize the placenta and prevent preterm labor. Without treatment, both mother and child are at risk. Nathan agreed and gave the doctor his email address. A few minutes later, he signed the consent form and sent it back. Regardless of how he feels about Vanessa, he won't let his revenge hurt an innocent life. After work, he decided to visit Lisa. Connor's sister plays a strange role in this mess, and he wants to know why. She lives in a small apartment on the north side of the city, in a building that looks a little run down. When Lisa opened the door, she looked surprised and a little nervous. Nathan, I didn't expect to see you. We need to talk, he said simply. Lisa let him in, and the interior of the apartment was much nicer than the exterior, well organized and filled with books and artwork. He noticed a number of pictures of Connor on the walls, as well as a few of people he didn't recognize. Why did you forge that diary? He asked directly, without any padding. Lisa's face changed, from surprise to defense, and finally to a strange kind of relief. He told you, didn't he? Nathan nodded. Connor says he's never kept a diary. The handwriting is forged. Why, Lisa? Lisa sighed and gestured for him to sit down. I hated Vanessa, she admitted, an almost pathological intensity in her voice. I knew from the first time she appeared in Connor's life that she was a liar, a woman with no real feelings for anyone. So you faked the diary to make her look even more hateful? Lisa nodded, a flash of guilt in her eyes. I want you to know the truth, but I'm afraid that Connor and her alone won't be enough to make you abandon her completely. You seem to love her too much. I want to make sure you never consider getting back together with her again. Nathan shakes his head, amazed at how far people can go to hurt others. Have you ever thought about how much pain this is going to cause me? Convince me that my entire marriage has been a lie from the start. Lisa lowered her head. I'm just trying to protect you from getting hurt again. I know my methods are wrong, but my intentions are good. Nathan doubts that. In Lisa's eyes, he sees a strange obsession, one that may stem from jealousy or other more complex emotions. Were those accusations you made against Connor false as well? About him not being able to have children? Lisa shook her head. No, that's true. He had tests done last year, and the doctor said his sperm count was extremely low. He told me about it because he was worried he'd never be able to have children. This explains at least part of the mystery. If Connor is truly infertile, then the child in Vanessa's womb is almost certainly David Morrison's, or possibly Nathan's own, although that's highly unlikely given the timing and her certainty. Leaving Lisa's apartment, Nathan felt a strange sense of relief. The lies in his marriage were more complicated than he thought, and everyone had their own agendas, their own secrets. But at least now he knew the truth, or as much of it as possible. Later that night, Nathan receives an unexpected email at his home. It's from Vanessa. The subject line is, "Thank you." He hesitated, almost deleting it, but curiosity got the better of him. He opened the email. Nathan, the doctor told me you agreed to the surgery. It says a lot about your character that even after all that has happened, you are still willing to help me. I know it sounds hypocritical, but I want to thank you. I will not justify my behavior or ask for forgiveness. I hurt you in ways that can't be repaired. But I want you to know that I never thought of our marriage as a game, and what's in that journal is not true. Yes, I betrayed you, and that's unforgivable. But at least at some point, I did love you. The doctor said the baby was healthy and the surgery was a success. I've decided to get a paternity test as soon as possible. You have a right to know the truth. Whatever the outcome, I won't ask you for anything. You've given me more than I deserve. Thanks again, Vanessa. Nathan closes the email, unsure how to feel. Part of him wanted to believe her, wanted to believe that at least some of their memories were real. But the other part is skeptical of her every word. She's proven herself to be an excellent liar, so why believe her now? He decided not to reply. Some bridges, once burned, cannot be rebuilt. Whatever feelings Vanessa once had, her behavior has destroyed them. He's earned his revenge, and now it's time to move on. That's the end of today's story. For more captivating tales, hit subscribe and never miss an episode.